Have you ever walked into a room and felt like someone else was quietly pulling the strings while you were left reacting, defending, explaining? It's like you're playing chess, but they've already moved 3 steps ahead. They don't raise their voice, they don't argue, yet somehow you feel smaller, outsmarted. But here's the truth. Power doesn't belong to the loudest voice. It belongs to the calmest presence. The man who can sit still while others unravel. The man who can watch an insult float past him without flinching. The man who can step out of a fight without feeling the need to win it. That's why the Stoics were feared, not just respected. They knew something most people still miss today. The less you reveal, the more power you hold. This is not manipulation, it's mastery of self. It's the art of outsmarting not by force, but by presence. And it changes everything, your conversations, your relationships, your business, even the way the world looks at you. Today, I'm going to share with you 6 disciplines that will rewire how you carry yourself. They're not tricks. They're not hacks. They're timeless, stoic strategies. And once you see them, you'll realize you don't need to play their game. You can set the frame. You can walk into any room with quiet authority. Stay with me, because once you master this, you'll never see power the same way again. Rule 1, master emotional stillness. Think about the last time someone pushed your buttons. A partner's sharp comment, a brother's comparison, or a friend's subtle jab. Most people do the same thing in these moments. They explode. Their voice climbs. Their hands move faster. Their words tumble out like rocks in a landslide. And for a brief second, it feels powerful, until they realize they've just surrendered everything. They've stepped into the frame set by someone else. Stillness isn't coldness. Anger is a spark, anxiety a shadow, jealousy a wave. They only rule you if you thrash against them. Like a fish caught on a line, the harder it pulls, the faster it tires itself out. 2 men stand in the same storm. One rages at the thunder, the other stands calm. The loud man feels strong for a moment, but it's the quiet one the crowd can't ignore. History always remembers the general who stayed composed under fire, not the soldier who shouted the loudest. The Stoics understood this. Seneca once warned that he who angers you conquers you. Notice what that means. When you lose yourself to emotion, you've already handed over the victory. Every argument you win in anger is actually a loss because you showed the other person the switch that turns you on and off. Think about a police interrogation. The suspect sits across the table, trying to hide the truth. The officer doesn't shout, doesn't rush. He stays calm, asking carefully chosen questions, letting silence stretch until the suspect begins to sweat. The more the suspect reacts, the more he reveals. That's the secret. When you lose stillness, you give yourself away. And once you're readable, you're already under someone else's control. It's not the punch that breaks you. It's being too predictable where the punch will land. That's why emotional stillness is the first discipline, because without it, every other move collapses. But when you master stillness, something shifts. Someone mocks you and you simply sip your drink. A partner raises their voice and you lower yours. A family member tries to shame you, and you look at them calmly, not with rage, but with clarity. Suddenly, the power dynamic flips. They expected fire. Instead, they met a wall of stone, and that unsettles them far more than shouting ever could. Here's the paradox. People will tell you that showing emotion makes you human, and it does when you choose when and how to reveal it. But the man who bleeds his feelings at every poke becomes predictable. And what is predictable is weak. Even actors know if every scene is screaming, the audience feels nothing. It's the pauses, the restraint that make the climax unforgettable. True emotional mastery is not about suppressing what you feel, but about deciding when those feelings deserve a voice. Next time someone tries to drag you into their storm, pause, claim the silence, and let it work for you. Ask yourself, is this reaction worthy of me, or am I just letting them steer my ship? That single moment can be the difference between being owned and being free. Because the one who remains still in the fire doesn't just survive it, he bends the fire to his will. And that is where real power begins. Rule 2. Let silence lead. Most people are terrified of silence. In a heated argument, they rush to fill the gap with louder words. On a first date, they ramble to avoid an awkward pause. At a family dinner, when someone throws a sharp question, when will you finally settle down? They scramble to defend themselves. That nervous noise doesn't protect them. It exposes them. Like a chess player who moves too quickly, thinking speed is strength. Yet every rushed move only brings defeat closer. Silence, on the other hand, is not emptiness. It's gravity. It pulls people in, forces them to reveal what's hidden. The man who can sit in silence without fear always holds the higher ground. Think about it. In a conversation, the one who speaks less often learns more. Lovers who can sit quietly together build deeper connection than those who talk endlessly to fill the void. Even in conflict, silence is sharper than a blade. A calm gaze across the table can cut through anger faster than 100 words. It's like a mirror. You say nothing, yet the other person suddenly sees themselves more clearly than they wanted to. Silence unsettles because it creates space for the other person to confront themselves. When you don't rush to respond, they start projecting. They guess what you're thinking. They reveal more than they intended. They negotiate with themselves. And all you did was stay quiet. Think of The Godfather. Don Corleone listens in silence while others plead in panic. He says nothing, yet the whole room bends to him. That is the hidden force of silence. And you don't need to be a mob boss to use it. Any man who controls the room without words carries the same aura. The Stoics knew this. They practiced withholding words until they carried weight. One line from Seneca says it all. Speech is easy, restraint is hard. Anyone can talk, few can resist, but those few command respect because their words feel like steel, not smoke. Silence isn't about winning power games, it's about knowing your value. A man who doesn't need to prove himself through constant chatter sends one undeniable message. I am enough as I am. Try this experiment. The next time you're tempted to explain yourself, hold back. Let the silence stand for you. Watch how people lean in, searching your face, treating your next words as rare. And when you finally choose to speak, even a single sentence will land like a verdict. Because silence is not weakness. It is restraint turned into presence. The world is addicted to noise. But the man who can lead with silence becomes unforgettable. And remember, stay with me until the end of Rule 4, because that's where something unusual will appear to help you understand exactly where you stand. If this message hits, pause for a second, then like the video so more men see it. Rule 3. Be strategically misunderstood. At a dinner party years ago, one friend leaned back, smirked, and said loud enough for all, "So it's true your wife left you, huh?" The table burst into laughter. Most men would snap, defend, explain every detail. But I didn't. I simply sipped my drink, looked at him, and said with a half smile, "Cheer for that. I know more than a few people here secretly wish they were where I am now." The laughter died. Eyes turned toward me, not with pity, but with respect. In their silence, they realized the more they thought they knew, the less they actually did. And the man who reveals less controls more. This is the essence of being strategically misunderstood. Most people rush to explain, to justify, to correct every assumption. They believe clarity protects them. In truth, it exposes them. The more you reveal, the more predictable you become, and anything predictable can be outmaneuvered. Think of a magician. The audience keeps guessing the trick, whispering theories, but the silence of the magician is what keeps the power alive. The mystery is his shield. The moment he over-explains, the magic dies. The same goes for men. If you explain yourself too much, you kill the aura that protects you. But when you choose restraint, you force others to fill in the blanks. They'll misread your silence as confidence, mystery, or even indifference. And in their guessing, they reveal themselves. It works the same in relationships. If someone you're dating tries to provoke you with, "You probably don't care about me," the average man panics, defending himself with a flood of words. But the one who remains calm, offering only a measured smile or a quiet "you'll see," leaves a different imprint. Instead of clarity, he leaves space. And in that space, doubt, curiosity, or respect begins to grow. History shows the same pattern. Napoleon was once called the Corsican upstart by his enemies. He didn't waste energy defending the insult. He let the world underestimate him until his victories rewrote the truth. Strategic misunderstanding gave him room to rise while others were still mocking his roots. The strange thing is, people who misunderstand you often reveal themselves more quickly. They relax their guard because they believe they've already figured you out. They speak too freely, expose their weaknesses, and lean into overconfidence. All the while, you're watching, listening, and waiting. Seneca hinted at this when he wrote that it is wiser to be thought a fool than to open your mouth and prove it. In modern terms, let others misjudge you. Their assumptions become your cover. Their confidence becomes your camouflage. Try it in small ways. In a heated debate, instead of rushing to correct every wrong assumption, let some of them stand. Watch how others show their hand while trying to interpret yours. Online, when someone attacks you on social media, resist the urge to clarify every detail. Their noise will expose them far more than your defense. Remember, the deadliest arrow is the one drawn in silence. They laugh, they relax, and then, before they even blink, it cuts through. That is how you outsmart without ever appearing to try. Rule 4. Turn absence into strength. Many of us love Beyoncé, right? She rarely gives interviews or appears on talk shows. But when she does step on stage, like at Coachella, the whole world stops to watch. Her rarity makes her presence unforgettable. That's the paradox most people miss. The more available you are, the less people notice you. Constant presence creates familiarity, and what is familiar is often taken for granted. Even in art, the pause between the notes is what makes the music memorable. A drum that never stops becomes background noise. But a single strike after stillness, it shakes the room. Look around your own life. There's always that one friend who shows up at every gathering, replies instantly, is always online. No one is excited when he arrives because he never really left. But the friend who rarely appears, when he walks in, the atmosphere shifts. People lean in, curious, wondering what he's been up to. His absence built weight for his presence. History shows this too. Think of generals who appeared on the battlefield only at decisive moments. Their very arrival inspired fear and respect. Or great thinkers who published rarely, but each work bent the course of history. Their scarcity gave their presence weight. Absence is a weapon. In a relationship, if you are always begging for attention, your presence loses its gravity. But if you withdraw when respect is lost, your silence teaches louder than your words ever could. In business, the man who talks in every meeting is forgotten. The one who speaks only when necessary is remembered. Scarcity makes every word, every action heavier. For years, I stayed absent from gatherings with old friends. But recently, when I finally showed up, they treated me like a celebrity. My silence had done more for me than years of constant presence ever could. And I realized the less you appear, the more people wonder. Mystery creates magnetism. This is not arrogance. It's discipline. You're training people to recognize that your time, your energy, your presence are not given freely. And when they aren't free, they're valued. Diamonds are valued not because they're everywhere, but because they're rare. The same is true for presence. Give two more and you vanish into puissance. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one you don't need to prove yourself in every room. The scarcity of your presence already shows your worth. Absence also served me well. By skipping most reunions, I saved my energy from small talk and old dramas. And when I finally appeared, the distance I chose made my presence heavier. My words land deeper. One friend even whispered that I seemed more mysteriously attractive. I just smiled, unsure if it was true, but amused by the effect. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Absence is not wasting time. It is saving it from what drains you and investing it in what makes you stronger. Think about it. The sun rises once a day and we stop to notice. But the neon light that stays on all night, no one pays attention. Value lives in rarity. So how about you? Next time, instead of rushing to reply, wait. Instead of showing up everywhere, choose the few places where you matter most. Watch how people lean in when you finally return. Because here's the truth. Absence, when chosen with clarity, is not weakness. It is presence refined. Sometimes the quiet of not being there speaks louder than anything you could say. And the man who learns this discipline doesn't just enter rooms, he transforms them. And before we close this rule, as promised, I have something set aside for you, a rare test designed to reveal whether you're truly outsmarting others or quietly being outsmarted yourself. Answer honestly, and you may see yourself in a way you never have before. When someone challenges you in public, do you A, react immediately, B, hold still and respond later? When you want to persuade someone, do you A, push your point harder, B, ask questions that guide them to see it themselves? In tense conversations, are you A, eager to fill silence, B, able to sit calmly in it? When people misjudge you, do you A, rush to correct them, B, let them believe what they want while you observe? When your presence is missed, do you A, feel guilty, B, know that absence builds weight? Now count your answers. If you chose mostly A, you're still playing the surface game, being pulled into frames set by others. If you chose mostly B, you're walking the path of quiet mastery. And if you're somewhere in between, that's your fine line, the place where real growth begins. And here's the twist. Once you've seen your line, you can never unsee it. Every conversation, every silence, every exit will remind you which side you stand on. That awareness alone is power. If you dare, share your result in the comments. Not the number, just write, "I've seen my line." Those who understand will know exactly what you mean. Rule 5. Lead quietly through reflection. Influence doesn't always roar. Sometimes it moves like water, shaping the rock not with force, but with patience. You see it in boardrooms, classrooms, even in families. A storm of words fills the air, accusations, defenses, noise. But then one voice enters, softer, slower. Not new arguments, not louder claims, just a reflection. A calm mirror held up, and suddenly the fire cools. That's the hidden strength of reflection. Most people think leadership is about commanding attention, but true influence often comes when you let the other person feel recognized. People trust what feels familiar, and nothing feels more familiar than hearing their own truth come back to them. Even Dale Carnegie, in his world-famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, taught that people trust you more when they feel heard, when their own words echo back through you. That's reflection, not argument. And it works because recognition disarms faster than resistance. Interrogators know this too. Mirror a suspect long enough, and the cracks appear without a single threat. Think of a teacher guiding a stubborn student. If she argues, the wall only hardens. But when she reflects the student's own reasoning back, gently exposing the gap, the student stumbles onto the answer himself. He leaves not feeling defeated, but proud, even though the truth was guided all along. That's the hidden danger too. If you can guide a friend this way, imagine how easily a skilled manipulator could guide you. But don't leave now, the real twist comes at the end. When you reflect their tone, their pace, their concerns, even lightly, they lower their guard. They think, this person understands me. And in that moment, resistance melts. It's almost unfair, like when you nod along to your kid's crazy story about dinosaurs, and somehow they think you're the smartest man alive. Think of it this way. A conductor doesn't shout over the orchestra. He raises his hand, sets the rhythm, and the music follows. The Stoic does the same with people. He doesn't argue to win. He guides through stillness. He reflects first, then redirects. And the beauty is they believe they arrived at the answer themselves. The more invisible your guidance, the more powerful it becomes. People forget your words, but remember how they felt with you. Safe, understood, unthreatened. That memory is stronger than any logic. Even with something as simple as a I say, hold steady, stay calm, and the barking softens into tail wagging. Influence doesn't need to dominate. Sometimes it only needs to reflect the peace it wishes to create. So try this. In your next conversation, resist the urge to jump in with, "Here's what I think." Instead, echo a fragment of what they said. Let them hear themselves again. Watch how the tension dissolves, how their eyes soften. That's leadership without the fight. If you've ever seen reflection in your own life, drop it in the comments. Others will learn from your story, so lead quietly. Reflect instead of resist. Guide instead of impose. When you master this, you won't need to demand respect. People will offer it freely because they'll feel something they can't quite name. The steadiness of a man who doesn't need to prove, but simply is. Rule 6, walk away with clarity. Not every battle is meant to be fought. Not every room deserves your presence. Real strength is knowing when to stand and when to leave. At a family dinner, my Aunt Irina, who raised me like a second mother, and her son fell into a heated argument. Both turned to me, demanding I choose a side. Years ago, I would have defended, explained, tried to fix it. But that night, I set my fork down, looked at them calmly, and excused myself. The silence I left behind weighed more than any verdict. Later, they both realized it wasn't my judgment that was needed. It was the space to hear themselves. That's the quiet power of departure. Most people cling to conversations, to deals, to relationships long after they've turned empty. They mistake suffering for loyalty. They endure what they should walk away from because they fear being forgotten. But fear is a chain, and chains never make you stronger. And if you're still with me, here's the truth most men miss. Leaving isn't weakness, it's strategy. Walking away doesn't mean you have lost. It means you've decided what's not worth your life. When you exit with calm clarity, you teach people something words never could. You are not desperate. You are not owned by outcomes. But you have your own direction and no one can control it but you. Think of Leonardo da Vinci. When Milan changed hands and his patrons no longer valued his work, he didn't sit still, begging for recognition. He left, first to Florence and later to France, where kings welcomed what others had ignored. In leaving, his value only grew. Milan lost him, but the world remembered him. Or think of Nelson Mandela. In prison, he refused to waste energy on every petty confrontation. He walked away from meaningless fights, saving his strength for the day that truly mattered, the day freedom came. That choice gave his quiet exit more force than his captor's noise. Sometimes walking away isn't noble, it's survival. The man who stays in every fight doesn't look brave, he just dies faster. Walking away is like folding in poker. The weak think it's quitting, the wise know it's waiting for the winning hand. And here's the hidden balance. When people know you can leave, your presence gains weight. You become unpredictable, not reckless, but free. Free from the trap of needing approval, free from the chains of endless compromise. And that freedom commands recognition more than any argument. So remember this, sometimes the most powerful move is not to raise your voice, not to strike back, but to stand, walk away, and let the silence do the talking. Like fire without fuel, conflict dies when you refuse to feed it. Let them replay the moment again and again, wondering why you didn't stay to fight. That question will echo longer than your defense ever could. True power doesn't beg to be seen. It doesn't cling. It knows when to depart with grace, and in that departure, it leaves a mark no storm can erase. If this struck something in you, pause here and share your story in the comments. Someone else might need to see that courage exists. Power isn't always in the strike. Sometimes it's in the stillness, in the silence you hold when others shout, in the choice to let them misjudge you while you sit in patience, in the weight of your absence, and in the quiet way you guide without ever forcing. And finally, it's in the strength to walk away, clear and untied. These 6 disciplines are not tricks. They are ground to stand on. Shields when the world tests you, and weapons when life demands courage. Master your emotions. Let pause lead. Be strategically misunderstood. Turn absence into strength. Lead quietly through reflection. Walk away with clarity. When you carry these, you don't just survive the noise of the world, you bend it. You don't chase power, you become it. And here's the twist of power. The more you master this inner game, the less you'll even need to prove it. You'll notice it in the smallest moments, a room that quiets when you enter, an argument that dies when you don't feed it, a weight that appears not because you asked, but because you embodied it. That is the Stoic way. So take a moment now, not just to listen, but to anchor one truth inside. Power isn't about being louder, it's about being unshakable. And the man who cannot be shaken cannot be owned. If this message reached you, leave your mark below. Write unshakable. That single word will remind you and signal to others that you've chosen a different path. One of presence, one of clarity, one of quiet power. And remember, the world doesn't need more noise. It doesn't need more shouting. It needs presence, quiet, rare, and undeniable. Be that presence, carry it into every room, every conversation, every decision. Because once you know this truth, there is no going back. You'll never see yourself the same way again, and neither will anyone else. I'll see you in the next lesson.